Hey, this is Jack Butler, and this is a beautiful evening here. This is the Flatirons in Boulder, Colorado. We're above the Sanitas Valley Trail, and I'm here to riff a little bit on, my favorite topic, evolution, personal evolution, global evolution, our collective evolution, and how I see those things coming together. I often say to people that we live in remarkable times. And I say that for so many reasons. I say that because this is the least violent time ever in history, despite what we see in the media. If you look at Steven Pinker and the kind of work that he and others have done on the decline that happens over time in violence, the meta trend, this makes it an amazing time to be alive. Most rational, democratic societies generally are peaceable places to live, and where people can pursue opportunity. They can pursue, for example, like I had when I was in London, starting your own business, pursuing a career that's meaningful to you, doing work that's authentic to you. And that's not to say that everyone has the opportunity to do that, but more and more people have the opportunity to do that. They have the technological tools to do that. They have the cultures and subcultures that will support them to do that. And that's completely exciting. When I think about careers advice, when I was leaving school, and I was lucky, I got a scholarship place to a very good school, but careers advice was uninspiring mostly. People talking to you about jobs that traditionally you did if you got a good education, that you go be a doctor, you go be a consultant, you go be a banker, you go be a lawyer and accountant, and if that's the path for you, those are amazing careers. But for those of us that are creative, that are entrepreneurial, that want to bring into being something that hasn't existed, that's better than things that have existed, that is not a very inspiring menu. And when I look at the sorts of people that I have in my tribe, activists, philosophers, entrepreneurs, social entrepreneurs, solopreneurs, impact investors, people that work in NGOs, people that work location independent, people that sell programs and courses online, people that market their ideas. This is a whole community and set of systems of people that are doing work that's really about being themselves. And I'm lucky, I get to coach people on that. I get to coach people on being themselves, on being more authentic, of living a life that's more true to who they are. And let's just get nitty-gritty about that. Really, that means living a life where you're not identified with particular roles or personas, where you're not who you are in the office. That doesn't define who you are, but where you get to be who you are more and more of the time, whether you're with your mum, whether you're in the office, whether you're playing sports with your mates, whether you're talking to someone that you've never met before, that increasingly there doesn't need to be a show, there doesn't need to be a projection of your personality, that who you are can start to come through in a deep and meaningful and authentic way. You don't have to minimize the places where you're afraid that you won't be accepted. And that's not to say that everyone will accept you equally, but we live in these remarkable times where increasingly there are cultures and subcultures where what people are wanting from you is for you to be yourself, is for you to show up. And the places where you feel fearful or contracted that you can't do that you can even bring that into the conversation. You could say, I notice that I'm not being authentic right now. That is a remarkable thing. If you grow up in a traditional culture, I come from the UK, that has a traditional culture there, which in the traditional consciousness is very stratified. It's the most, quote, class-ridden society under the sun. And that means that if you're born into a certain class, historically, you aren't going to be creating something and then jumping into another class. Yes, there was certain people that did certain forms of social climbing that would sometimes be acceptable, but think of it like this: Prince William married a commoner, Kate Middleton. That's the first time really that's happened in the history of the royals. So we live in a time where the narrative is opened up, where I talk about salsa, self-authoring life scripts. People are able to author a life. It's not just that your dad was a blacksmith, so you're a blacksmith. Your dad was a butcher, so you're a butcher. Or you were born a girl, so you don't get the right to work. Think of the ways that the world's opening up, and we've got so much more to do. But if you can stop and just take pause and notice the ways that you have been part of a more evolving world, whether it's the fact that you recycle, whether it's that you compost, whether it's that you supported gay marriage, whether it's that you have a tolerance for sexual orientation or ethnicity or race that your grandparents wouldn't have had because that's just not how they grew up, whether it's that you're aware of the supply chain that goes into the things that you consume, whether you're making conscious choices about the food that you put into your body, whether you are working your relationship in a way that is bringing more consciousness into being because you're including the parts of you that your shadow, right? The parts of you that you don't want to feel seen. These are incredibly potent practices and technologies that we have at our disposal at this time. I'm an integralist. As an integralist, what we sense is that we have access to Western and Eastern. We have access to the best of Western scientific rationality. We have the access to Eastern contemplative spirituality, and that we are living in this time of synthesis, or this time where we can draw from different traditions, different approaches, different perspectives, and that actually a facet of higher level leadership and development is your ability to hold multiple perspectives, is your ability to bring these things into one view but hold the complexity, not need to conflate two things that are not actually the same, but hold the possibility of competing and partial truths. That means that we're living in a kind of ever expanding, multiplying truth matrix where more and more of reality can be included and can become true. That you politically, for example, could see the truth in a left-wing perspective that systems are unfair and that as citizens we should do something about that. And at the same time, you can espouse a right-wing perspective and say, you know what, tradition, hard work, personal responsibility, bootstrapping yourself, that these are important values, and that if people can espouse those values, it actually creates remarkable things in their life. That's why it's a remarkable time to be. Think of the access to ideas that people have through, I'm looking here at my MacBook, I'm shooting this on my iPhone. I spent Christmas in Kenya and January. And the proliferation of smartphones there, even in areas where people are very poor, they have access to a smartphone, a lot of them. That gives them the ability to educate themselves. It opens up all sorts of information. When I grew up, we were lucky if we got hold of a particular tape, or maybe even eventually a CD of an American motivational speaker that might grab hold of your psychology and say to you, you know what, you're not your biography. Your biography is not your destiny. You can be something else. You can define yourself. You can have goals. We can look at the Harvard Goal Study. You can aspire, you can inspire other people, you can break out. You don't have to be defined by where you come from. Now you think of the access to that sort of information is just multiplying every day. So yes, it creates complexity, yes, it creates lots of demands for our attention, but it means this is the most educated, go-getting, cosmopolitan, diverse generation that's globally connected and is coming together in this view of we are in this together on this small, fragile, global earth that we have, and that we need to act as one human family, and we need to protect the dignity and the sacredness of every life on earth. That is the promise that we're moving into. I don't know if you, for example, have seen the Global Citizen Festival. Global Citizen Festival happens every fall in New York in Central Park, and they have amazing headline acts. They have Coldplay and Ed Sheeran, and then they've got the best of the top of the line politicians. Michelle Obama, they've got Barack Obama who did a video. Joe Biden, the vice president, showed up last time. So it's a real who's who of philanthropy and politics and business. But what they've helped do is put this meme, the global citizen, on the map, so that more and more people start to and this has been happening for tens of years, but more and more people identify with all humanity. That's what the social psychologists, the sociologists call it, identify with all humanity, which means that you consider yourself to be part of one human family, and that everyone who's on the inside of that, everyone who's part of the in-group, has value, should have your moral concern. You should have regard for them. They matter. And that is unprecedented. Again, that more and more people can get included. With DOMA and the Supreme Court striking down the Defense of Marriage Act and basically legalizing gay marriage across the United States, and this has been happening throughout European states and many parts of the world. Like, I can't imagine when we might take one step back, but that's a trend that's the horse has left the stable, and that's a remarkable thing. So gays get to be included. They get to be worthy of our love and our moral concern. I imagine that transgender is going to be next. That we've started that process, but there's still a long way to go for most of us culturally and legally and practically when it comes to toilets and other considerations, menus, surveys, options, that we get to include everyone and everyone gets to be themselves. That is a remarkable world to live in, where we take a stand culturally, politically, and legally for people being themselves and being valued for who they are and worthy of being loved and loving. You know, you don't need David Bowie, but it's a great quote where he says, really, ultimately, strip it away. It's about loving and being loved. That is such a deep and essential part of the human journey. I get excited about how many people are working on stuff that they care about. You know, heart-centered work. I mean, what more could you ask for, that you would do something in your life, that you'd be putting your time and attention, your resources, the best years of your life, your physicality, your brains, your smarts, your hearts, towards something that you care about, towards something that's meaningful and that can make a difference in the world. The number of people who work with some kind of impact, where the reason that they're getting up and they're going to work is not just the employment contract or the business making a profit, but it's that directly they are doing something that they really care about. And then there's even maybe a level beyond that where people actually are just getting to express themselves in an essential and deep way, and that becomes part of who they are at work. That is generationally, we are privileged that not everyone, but a lot of us increasingly have that opportunity. It's a remarkable thing. And I'm not saying this for just an overly optimistic perspective. There are places that we are potentially falling back. I mean, the level of political and cultural polarization in Western societies right now, I think, is on the increase. The fact that liberals and conservatives really can't see common ground. We've seen this in Congress in the US. We see it around the UK referendum with the Leave and Remain campaign. I mean, these are very different perspectives on life. From an integral perspective, we try and include those. We try to understand them. We try to be in touch with them so that we can actually make sense of them and include what is good and useful about them. And at the same time, cultural polarization is going up, and it has difficult cultural consequences, like people not really feeling part of one thing. So we have got work to do, but let us remember Margaret Mead, that a small group of citizens can change the world. Indeed, is the only thing that ever has, and that if you are part of something that you want to advocate for or you want to bring into being in the world, there's probably not been a better time, historically speaking, for you to do that. So that's why I'm excited. That's why I'm psyched to speak with you. That's why I'm excited that when I was growing up, I had a nickname at high school, Potential. My politics teacher used to call me Potential. I've always been fascinated by human potential. What's the possibilities? What are our deepest capacities? What are our broadest intelligences? What does a more or less evolved human being look like? How do we know that we're growing? How can we be oriented to our growth? How can we be oriented to fulfilling our potential when we don't even know what that potential is? And if we think of a human being as an open-ended system, that potential grows in a way that we don't even know about, that we don't even know 5 years ago the kind of potential that we might be exploring now. That's certainly what I feel has happened in my life. But I can see that thread, that human development, human potential, collective potential, collective development, that's been the thing that I've oriented to in my work. And it feels like a complete privilege to be able to do that, that the part of me that had an inkling to that as a teenager, but had no real way of knowing what would that career look like, and no way of really finding initial mentorship into that, or not even knowing if there's a way you could ever get paid to do something like that, to get paid to coach and advise people, to be able to put content in the world that I care about. That's a super privilege. And if I just touch into that, I feel really grateful for that. And that's coincided with the kind of rise of, the people putting their content and ideas out into the world. The kind of the YouTubers, the content creators, the prosumers, professional consumers, people able to bring more of themselves to each other, and that we get to learn from one another. And the sort of things that we're learning are the things that are important to living a 21st century life. A lot of us had that experience, and I went to a good school, but you learn a lot of stuff that doesn't seem particularly relevant when you leave education. And through the kind of the education revolution that's happening through Teachable, through Creative Live, through YouTube Red, through all sorts of live streaming, through the way that we share on social media, through Udemy, through Coursera, and the list goes on, that Khan Academy, that kind of education is more relevant to the problems that people are facing in their life often. And that's fantastic. it's two levelers in life, right? Death and education. And the fact that education is being opened up in this way, and that there's such a plurality of pathways through it, and the way that we're recognizing value and accreditation, that whole conversation's going up, so you don't need to have gone to an Ivy League school and taken on substantive debt, that we are shifting the conversation around that. Bernie Sanders has been part of that. That is incredible. That gives us openings and opportunities and possibilities, developmental pathway possibilities that just didn't exist 20 years ago. And that is increasing inexorably, right? That's disproportionately, that is increasing every year. So no better time to go educate yourself. It's like Gary Vaynerchuk says, what do you want to learn? Just type it into YouTube. And of course, yes, the quality will vary, but just the fact that you've got such on-demand responsiveness, you think that versus sitting in a class where you don't even know why the teacher's teaching you what they're teaching you, and you don't really care about it, that is such a reversal. That I marvel at that. And if you're not part of that, then this is an encouragement to be part of it increasingly. So I'm going to start wrapping up here. Thanks for being with me for my first YouTube live stream. If you have questions or comments, I'd love you to put them in there. If you have pushbacks, if you disagree, if you think I'm full of BS, tell me. But let's be in dialogue about it. That's my encouragement, and that's the standard I set for my channel. I'm not right about everything. I want to improve and learn and grow. I encourage people to be respectful, but let's dialogue. Let's be in that space where we can meet one another and move forward and learn and be impressionable and dialogic. So thanks for being with me. You have a great night.